Does the silence ever feel like a betrayal? You did everything right. You gave your youth to your career, your heart to your family, and your strength to anyone who asked for it. You were the bridge, the glue, the anchor. And yet here you are, sitting in a room where the only thing louder than the ticking clock is the question screaming in your mind, is this all that's left for me? It hurts. It's a physical ache in the chest when the phone doesn't ring, or when you realize you haven't spoken a word out loud for 3 days. You feel like a ghost in your own home, invisible to a world that is in too much of a hurry to notice you. But before you let that cold shadow swallow you whole, let me tell you about a man named Julian, and a room that was emptied for a reason you haven't seen yet. For most of his life, Julian believed that a good life was a loud one. His workshop was always humming with people. There were neighbors dropping by to chat, young men wanting to learn the craft, and the constant, busy noise of fire and clay. Julian loved it. He loved being the man everyone turned to. He felt strong, useful, and important because his hands were always full and his house was always noisy. To Julian, if the room was full, it meant he was loved. If his calendar was packed, it meant he mattered. Like many of us, he spent decades running, giving, and doing, thinking that the more noise he made, the more alive he was. He didn't realize that in all that busyness, he had forgotten how to listen to his own heart. But as the years passed, the world began to change. One by one, the people he loved started to drift away. His children moved to distant cities to build their own lives. His students opened their own shops and stopped calling for advice. And eventually, the person who had sat across from him at the dinner table for 50 years, his dear wife, was gone too. Suddenly, the noise stopped. The house that once echoed with laughter and footsteps became perfectly, painfully still. For the first year, Julian hated that silence. He felt like an old tool that had been thrown into a dark corner because it was no longer needed. He would sit by the window, watching the world go by, feeling invisible. He thought the silence was a punishment. He thought that because he was no longer busy, he was no longer valuable. Have you ever felt that way? Like the world has moved on and left you in the quiet? The change started on a simple Tuesday afternoon. Julian was sitting in his dusty workshop, looking at his pottery wheel. For months, he hadn't touched it. He felt too tired, too old, too alone. But that day, just to pass the time, he sat down and put a piece of clay on the wheel. He started it spinning. In the past, when the room was full of people talking, Julian used to rush. He made things quickly to sell them, to please others, to keep the business moving. But now, with no one watching and no one waiting, he didn't have to rush. In the absolute quiet of that room, Julian noticed something wonderful. For the first time in 40 years, he could actually feel the clay. He felt the way it responded to the lightest touch of his thumb. He heard the soft, steady rhythm of the wheel. He noticed the tiny details in the texture of the earth that he had been too busy to see when he was young. Without the distraction of everyone else's voices, Julian's hands found a new kind of magic. He began to create things that were more beautiful than anything he had made in his successful years. He wasn't just making a bowl, he was pouring his peace, his memories, and his soul into the clay. He realized that the silence hadn't taken his life away, it had given him the space to finally find himself. He understood that he wasn't being forgotten, he was being prepared. The universe had cleared away the noise so that he could finally create his masterpiece. And that masterpiece wasn't just the pottery, it was the calm, wise man he was becoming. Julian was alone, yes. But for the first time, he felt truly whole. He realized that his light didn't come from the crowd. It came from the quiet strength he found within. Julian's story is a reminder that we often mistake busy for meaningful. We've spent decades believing that if our hands are full, our lives must be, too. But the universe has a different way of refining us. Sometimes, it clears the room not to leave you empty, but to give you a sacred clearing. Think of a forest. Only when an old tree falls can the sunlight finally reach the soil, allowing new, beautiful things to bloom. The Stoics taught us a powerful truth: your value doesn't depend on the crowd. If your happiness requires the noise of others, you are never truly free. But when you learn to be at home with your own silence, you become a lighthouse. A lighthouse doesn't run around the beach looking for boats to save. It stands steady and simply shines. Its power is in its stillness. In this season of your life, you are being invited to stop doing and start being. Your worth isn't measured by your to-do list, but by the peace you carry. When you are at peace with yourself, you become a gift to everyone you meet. That empty chair in your home isn't a symbol of loss. It's a seat reserved for the wisdom you are finally ready to welcome home. Don't be afraid of the quiet, my friend. The world has always been loud enough, demanding your time, your energy, and your attention. In this season of your life, you are finally being given back to yourself. Tonight, if the weight of the stillness feels heavy, remember Julian. Remember that your story isn't over. It's simply reaching the movement where the melody becomes a solo. And often, the solo is where the most profound beauty is found. It is where we finally hear the music of our own souls. If this message found you at the right time, I'd love to hear from you. What has the silence taught you lately? Or perhaps, tell us about a masterpiece you've discovered in your own quiet hours. Leave a comment below. Your wisdom might be the very light someone else needs to find their way home tonight. Our porch is always open, and if you found comfort here, I invite you to join our circle by subscribing. We are building a sanctuary for those who know that life's autumn is its most golden season. Thank you for sharing your time with me. Be patient with your heart, stay wise, stay kind, and keep shining.